You're on a first date. The conversation is flowing. You just said something genuinely charming for once in your life. And then, out of absolutely nowhere, a hiccup. Your diaphragm decides this is the moment to stage a small, involuntary rebellion. Again, and again, and again, every 10 seconds, in front of another human being who was, until 90 seconds ago, considering a second date. So today we're answering the question that has humiliated humans since the dawn of time. Why do we hiccup? What's actually happening inside your body when it happens? And most importantly, does any of the cures your grandma swears by actually work? Let's get into it. Let's start with the boring but important part, because you can't laugh at your own hiccups properly until you understand what your body is actually doing to you. A hiccup, or singultus if you want to sound like a Victorian doctor, is caused by a sudden involuntary spasm of your diaphragm. That's the big dome-shaped muscle sitting right under your lungs that does most of the work when you breathe. Normally, your diaphragm moves in a smooth, controlled way. It contracts, air comes in, it relaxes, air goes out. Boring, reliable, works great. It's basically the office employee who's never late and never causes drama. But every once in a while, that same diaphragm gets a wrong signal, usually from a nerve called the phrenic nerve, sometimes with backup chaos from the vagus nerve, and it contracts suddenly and sharply, out of rhythm. That sudden contraction makes you suck in air quickly, and about a tenth of a second later, your vocal cords, specifically a little flap called the glottis, slam shut to stop the air. That slamming shut is where the actual hic sound comes from. So technically, every hiccup is your throat panic closing a door on air that was already halfway through it. Very dramatic, very unnecessary, extremely your body's whole personality, honestly. Okay, so now we know what a hiccup is. But why does this happen? What sets off that misfire? The honest answer? A lot of things, and doctors don't fully agree on the exact mechanism for every case. But there are some extremely well-known triggers. 1. Eating too fast. When you inhale your food like you're being timed, you swallow extra air along with it. That air stretches your stomach, which sits right next to and can physically press on your diaphragm. Stomach says, hey, personal space. Diaphragm says, understood, and spasms. 2. Carbonated drinks. Same idea. All those bubbles expand in your stomach and create pressure right where your diaphragm doesn't want it. 3. Alcohol. Alcohol relaxes the muscle at the top of your stomach, the lower esophageal sphincter, which lets stomach acid and gas travel back up and irritate the nerves involved in the hiccup reflex. So yes, there is a real scientific reason why hiccups and a night out are basically a package deal. 4. Sudden temperature changes. Gulping something ice cold or scalding hot can shock the nerves in your esophagus enough to trigger a spasm. 5. Excitement or stress. Strong emotions can affect the vagus nerve, which runs right past your diaphragm. So technically, getting hiccups from being nervous on a date is just your vagus nerve being dramatically on brand. 6. Spicy food. Irritates the same esophageal nerves as the temperature thing. In rare cases, hiccups that last a long time, we're talking more than 48 hours, which doctors call persistent hiccups, or more than a month called intractable hiccups, can be a sign of something more serious, like irritation of the vagus or phrenic nerve from an underlying condition, acid reflux, or even issues in the brain or chest. If hiccups genuinely won't stop for days, that's a see an actual doctor situation, not a watch a YouTube video situation. We'll come back to that, but for 99% of us, hiccups are just a harmless, mildly embarrassing, completely random glitch, a little hardware bug in an otherwise decent operating system. Here's the part where things get genuinely fascinating, because scientists have actually asked, why would evolution give us this pointless reflex in the first place? One leading theory says hiccups are an evolutionary leftover, a little fossil of behavior baked into our nervous system from our very, very distant ancestors. Some researchers point out that the hiccup reflex looks a lot like the motion tadpoles and some amphibians use to push water over their gills while keeping it out of their lungs. The theory goes that as our ancestors evolved from water-breathing to air-breathing creatures, this old neural circuit for gill clearing never fully got deleted. It just got repurposed, and now it occasionally fires for no reason, like an appendix that makes noise. It's also worth mentioning, babies hiccup constantly in the womb. Some studies suggest fetal hiccups might actually help practice the coordination between the diaphragm and the vocal cords before birth, basically a dress rehearsal for breathing. So the same twitchy reflex that embarrasses you at dinner might have started out as a genuinely useful training exercise before you were even born. Nature's weird like that. It gives you a whole training montage as a fetus and then never bothers to turn the feature off. So, can you actually prevent hiccups before they start? Not with 100% certainty, since sometimes they just happen. But you can meaningfully lower your odds by avoiding the known triggers we just covered. Eat slower and take smaller bites. Revolutionary concept, I know. Avoid gulping carbonated drinks. Go easy on the alcohol, especially chugging it. Don't swing between ice-cold and piping hot drinks back to back. Try to relax during meals instead of eating while stressed or in a rush. Basically, your diaphragm is happiest when you treat mealtime like a calm, civilized activity instead of a competitive eating event. Shocking advice, truly groundbreaking science. Now for the part you actually clicked for, the remedies. Everyone has a hiccup cure passed down from a relative who swears it's never failed. So let's go through the most popular ones and talk about what's actually happening and whether the science backs it up. Holding your breath. This one has real logic behind it. Holding your breath increases the carbon dioxide level in your blood, which can help reset the nerve signals involved in the hiccup reflex. It doesn't work every time, but it's one of the more scientifically reasonable go-to methods. Breathing into a paper bag. Same principle as above. You're raising your CO2 levels, which can help calm the erratic nerve signal. Just, don't get carried away here. A few breaths is fine. Hyperventilating into a bag for 10 minutes is a different video entirely. Drinking water, especially from the far side of the glass or upside down. This one doesn't have strong hard evidence, but the theory is that the unusual swallowing motion stimulates the vagus nerve in a way that can interrupt the spasm cycle. Mostly anecdotal, but harmless and mildly entertaining to watch someone attempt. Getting scared, the classic. The idea is that a sudden fright triggers a big, involuntary reflex response that can override the smaller hiccup reflex, basically distracting your nervous system with a bigger, louder problem. It genuinely does work for some people. It also ends friendships. Use responsibly. A spoonful of sugar. The theory here is that the mildly irritating texture on your tongue and throat can stimulate the vagus nerve enough to interrupt the signal. Small study evidence, mostly folk remedy, but again, low risk and hey, sugar. The Valsalva maneuver, pulling your knees to your chest or bearing down like you're, using the bathroom. This one's a legitimate medical technique. It increases pressure in your chest and abdomen and can genuinely help reset diaphragm spasms. Doctors actually recommend versions of this for persistent hiccups. Here's the honest truth, though. There is no single remedy that works for everyone every time because researchers still don't fully understand the exact hiccup mechanism, which means there's no universal off switch. Most home remedies work by doing one of two things: raising your carbon dioxide levels or stimulating the vagus nerve, both of which can interrupt the misfiring signal loop. So if you want the best odds, pick a method from one of those two categories, rather than just copying whatever your uncle does at Thanksgiving. And to circle back, if hiccups last more than 48 hours, or you're getting them in frequent, severe episodes that disrupt eating, sleeping, or breathing, that's genuinely worth a visit to a doctor. Long-lasting hiccups can occasionally be linked to nerve irritation, acid reflux, or other underlying issues, and there are real medical treatments available for that. This isn't just a drink water upside down situation anymore. Let's end on something delightfully absurd. The longest recorded case of hiccups belonged to a man named Charles Osborne, who reportedly hiccuped continuously for 68 years, starting in 1922 and finally stopping in 1990. 68 years. Somehow, the man still got married, twice, had 8 kids. Truly the most inspirational if he can do it, so can I story never told in a graduation speech. So next time you're hiccuping through an important Zoom call or a first date, just remember, it could always be 68 years worse. So, to sum it up, hiccups are just your diaphragm having a tiny, involuntary tantrum. usually triggered by eating too fast, carbonation, alcohol, or your emotions being a bit much. You can lower your odds by slowing down at meals, and if they do strike, your best bets are the ones backed by actual physiology, holding your breath, the paper bag trick, or the knees to chest maneuver, not just whatever your family has been doing since 1987. If you learned something, or if you're currently hiccuping right now because apparently that's just how the algorithm works, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments what your go-to hiccup cure is. I want to know how weird it gets.